Well, listen, I'm so honored to share this hour with you and engage in a conversation about strengths development. I know we've been using this term pathways a lot, but I already had it in my title, and I was tempted to jump in and change it, but we will not alter it. But yesterday we spent time going over Dr. Schreiner's construct for thriving. And we talked about those 5 elements. Even if you think about the image of the flower, do you remember those 5 elements that kind of consist in that framework? Call them out if you don't mind. Yeah. Well, remember. Okay, that's not one, but thanks. All right. Thank you. A diligent faculty member here. Good. So yes, positive perspective. Academic determination, engaged learning, diverse citizenship, excellent, and then social connectedness. And very good, very good, very good. And one piece that she highlighted is the role that sense of community plays in fostering those thriving outcomes. She alluded to this as well on yesterday, that strengths development also serves as a very significant pathway to ensure that our first year students are actually thriving and at least moving in that direction. And so I thought it would be prudent for us just to have a conversation about, what is strengths about? What's the premise? How did this movement begin? Why has it's just taken off in higher education in a very major way? And so we'll reference that. And I do understand that some of you have actually gone through formal strengths training, and so some of this may be repeat. So kind of bear with us. It'll only take us a few minutes, but I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. The second piece, I would like for us to highlight research that really shares with us that using a strengths development approach really has a major impact on the academic, the social, and emotional well-being of students. And then I think we should spend the rest of our time brainstorming and thinking about ways that we can integrate this strengths development approach into our FYS courses. So what are some very unique ways, some very creative ways that we can engage students and help them become a little more insightful about their capacity? So over the course of this day and a half, we've heard a lot from different leadership, different leaders across campus and their resource centers on campus. And I think that's wonderful that students are enveloped with services and people who can support them in their development. I think what today's session is all about is helping students become acutely aware of the resources that are within them. And let's face it, there are some of the students that walk onto our campus and they do not clearly understand the way that they're wired, the way that they're designed, and ways to leverage the way that they're designed to be successful over the course of their academic journey. And so that is going to be that's going to be the focus of our conversation. So I do have a huge favor to ask of you. All of you have name tents in front of you. You have name tents in front of you. You also have tags around your neck. But for the name tents that are on the tables, do me a huge favor. Write in your top 5. Preferably, if you have space, go ahead and write those top 5 underneath your name. Okay, underneath your name. So when we see your name, we see those top 5 as well. Okay. While you're writing, let me pose a question to the group. When you hear strengths, what naturally comes to mind? Chip Anderson, yeah, and you know what? That's a perfect segue. There's a thought that I always include anytime that I talk about strengths, particularly in higher education. Because Chip was really the catalyst behind taking this strengths philosophy that, for the most part, was applied in business and enterprise, and saying, hey, it's applicable in higher education, and even starting some research surrounding it. So I love this thought. This is what Chip shares. Every individual has resources that can be mobilized to success. And he believed that. Did any of you have an opportunity to meet Chip? Show of hands. Okay, yeah. Pretty meaningful encounter, right? I didn't have the pleasure of meeting Chip, But when I first started in 2012, I met with a lot of faculty and staff and academic leadership here at APU. And I was curious, hey, how had the Noel Strengths Academy been a resource to you, and tell me about your relationship with key people within the department. And when people would have conversations about Chip, they would tear up. And I mean, Chip had a passion for developing students. And so anytime that I start these types of conversations, I always believe it's important to honor him and to acknowledge that heritage. Some of that stems too from my context, which is in my top 10. So those of you with context, you know that there's this emphasis that we place on history and heritage. And so I feel very honored to kind of succeed his legacy and his leadership in our department. Okay, so everybody, you have those top 5 written in. Okay, let me look around. Beautiful, beautiful. I see a lot of creativity. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, good. All right, what else comes to mind when you hear the term strengths?
Something I'm good at.
Yeah, and sometimes people believe that is something that I'm good at, but that's not always true. Yeah, you know that, but sometimes students think that. Yes, yes. And we'll come back to this in just a few moments. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. Okay. Other responses. Something that we're really attempting to do on campus, and we are partnering with a number of leaders across throughout our community. When most people hear strengths, they think of the tool, the Clifton Strengthsfinder, and it's an incredible resource, and we endorse it, and we're so glad that it's common language here at APU. So if we have a student that walks on Cougar Walk and they shout woo, most people around them know exactly what that means, right? We share with them, don't do that at Target. You know, you may be heading to the counseling center, and that 3-day hold may be applicable to you, you know. But I would say for most people who are associated with our learning community, they're familiar with the language. And so it becomes a real nice tool that we can leverage that builds community. And it also sends this message that every person that steps onto our campus, that they hold value and they can contribute in some type of way. So yeah, it's one thing that we're trying to do though is really highlight the perspective over the tool. And the tool is invaluable, and I believe that the tool creates space for the larger conversation, which is tied to the perspective. It's students' ability to see the potential and possibility in people and situations. And let's face it, not all of our students, when they leave APU, will recall their top 5. But it is our hope that they will still be able to maintain that perspective wherever they go. And so as you teach your classes and you intersect with your students, yes, definitely leverage this language, highlight it, because it's great language to use. But also challenge our students to adopt this perspective that's really grounded in positive psychological literature, the strengths perspective, okay? All right. So let me give you a quick introduction about my top 5. Okay, because it would be wrong for me to continue this conversation and you've written down your top 5 and I do not share my top 5. So my top strength is achiever. Achiever. How many of you have achiever in your top 5? Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And if you don't have achiever in your top 5, something is wrong with you. No, I'm just teasing. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So those of us with achiever, we value hard work. You know, we value productivity. Most of us with achiever, and this is true for many of our students, because it is a high frequency strength on our campus, we like checklists. Okay? We become energized with more with items that we accomplish. The more that we complete, the more energized we become. So achiever is my top strength. My second strength is positivity. Positivity. Anybody know this guy right here? Shaquille O'Neal, right? Shaquille O'Neal. I was actually speaking at a conference in Atlanta last year, and after I was done for the day, I went to the hotel's gym. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some cardio in, and I'm going to lift some weights. And then I heard this deep voice say, "What's up?" And so I turned around and I was looking at like a guy's chest. And then I looked up and I saw this huge grin. And so I can actually share with people, and I'm being very honest, I worked out with Shaquille O'Neal for 20 minutes. And we had a lot of fun. By the way, positivity is in Shaquille O'Neal's top 5. And so one mistake that I did make, I became a little zealous and ambitious. When I saw the weight that he was curling, I tried to follow suit, and my arms felt like spaghetti, right? But that was fun. That was fun, kind of hanging out with Shaquille O'Neal for 20 minutes. I texted my son the picture, like, "Dad, you look like his kid." You know? My third strength is belief. How many of you have belief in your top 5? It tends to be a high frequency. Well, all two of us, all right? Look, don't be ashamed. Raise your hand high, claim it. Yes, indeed. So most of us on campus with belief, we have core values that really impact our decisions. It informs the way that we teach, the way we interact with students, the decisions that we make. Many times the programs or activities that we associate with, they have to be mission congruent. So belief is within our top 5. Actually, belief was in a strength in Chip's top 5 as well. I also have includer. Anybody have includer? Okay, some includer in the room. Okay, includer in the room. So for it's Louise. For Louise and I, if we walk into Heritage and we see a student sitting by themselves, it absolutely bothers us. And we're like, why is that student sitting by herself? And sometimes we will impose ourselves and say, "Hey, do you need company?" And they're like, "Will you please get away from me," right? Security, But that's the way that we're wired. It's very natural for us as well to identify students who are on the fringe. So students who are in the room, but they're not a part of the learning community in that room. And so we naturally think of ways to include that person, strategic ways to have conversations so that person feels a part. That's just the way that we're wired. My 5th strength is developer. And by the way, developer is a high frequency strength within our undergraduate student body. Developer as well as adaptability. However, with our faculty, what do you think is the high frequency strength among faculty here at Learner's 1. Intellection is in the top 5. Ideation. So a lot of those thinking strengths. So learner. Now, some of you don't start turning your cards over, okay? Because, we have new faculty orientation, and one question that we like to pose to faculty, is it possible for you to be an effective faculty member without thinking strengths? What we class as thinking strengths. So intellection, ideation, input, learner, analytical. And this is what we experience right here. It's just total silence. And the people with thinking strengths are like, "Well, I got them. I'm good," right? And then those without thinking strengths are like, "Oh my goodness." And the answer to the question is an emphatic what? Yes. Like one mistake or one misconception that people hold is that if I don't have thinking strengths or class thinking strengths within my top 5, then I can't be thoughtful, which is so far from the truth. And we also see the converse of that, those who have thinking strengths, people, well, do you have the social aptitude to relate to students? Well, somebody said no in the back. No, I don't. I don't. Okay? So those are my top 5. It's a good constellation, don't you think? Yes.
You said developer
Yeah.
tends to be a signature strength among the undergraduates.
Yes.
Why is that? And tell us a little bit about that.
A developer, the emphasis is usually on progress. And it's not just applicable to people, but it's also entities. And I would say that a lot of our students, they have this desire to be engaged with service. and this emphasis on calling and wanting to make a difference. That element of thriving that Lori referenced on yesterday, diverse citizenship. So it's understanding that I have influence, I want to make a difference, I can make a difference. The third piece, I am making a difference. That I think that is a real mindset of many of our students here at APU. And so that may be the reason why developer is a high frequency strength. Not sure. I mean, yeah, good question. Okay.
So this is the picture that Bill Biala was referencing yesterday of
Yeah.
the thriving metaphor under developer.
Yeah. Something else I'll share with this group, I don't think it's prudent to share this information with our undergraduate students just because of their developmental stage and their maturity level, but technically your top 10 are most stable. And so when I speak with faculty and staff on campus, I always want to remind them that, yes, you have your top 5, but remember that there is a 6th, a 7th, a 8th, a 9th strength that you may leverage successfully in the classroom, in your relationships with students. The issue with bringing that up with students is in two terms, is strengths envy. So when students aren't comfortable with the strengths that are reflected, and I'm using this term strengths very loosely. Technically, when referencing this language with undergraduate students, we should probably use the term talents, meaning that talents are the predisposition of a strength, and there's opportunity for what? Development. For development. So I should be a little more technical in my language use, so forgive me for not doing that sooner. But for our students, sometimes, they're a little uncomfortable with the talent themes that they have reflected in their top 5. And some of this, I believe, is heavily influenced by the culture of our campus. We are a highly relational campus. And so a lot of students, they want the themes of relator, and they want woo. I mean, I've had students walk into my office, Dr. K, this test is screwed. And I'm like, why do you say that? Well, I know relator should be in my top 5, or I should have woo. And I'm like, slow down, right? That all of the themes are good. So one request that I will offer to everyone here, and we really need your assistance with this, is stressing that all of the themes, they are good. They are good. And for some reason, and even here at APU, certain themes are esteemed higher than others. Like students, they don't want command. And then there are even gender implications that are tied to some of these themes. Like some of our female students who have command or strategic reflected in their top 5. Sometimes there's a level of discomfort with having those themes. And then for our guys, I think Eileen referenced an example, having harmony or having empathy reflected in their top 5. So really helping them. Alex, what do you have? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And you know what? Your wife is loving it. But really sharing the value that's associated with those specific themes. Okay, Brian, I saw your hand.
I was going to say, I've had many students come to me and feel that their strengths were wrong.
Yes.
Over here.
Yes.
And a lot of times it's just understanding what they are. And
yes.
They gave the answer. But sometimes it just took the test wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I failed the first time, I always say, because I didn't read the instructions.
Yes.
And the instructions were explicit, so we just got to remember to tell them to read the instructions before they take them.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that we're hoping to do, and Katie's been a part of this conversation, and Eileen and others, is giving students good direction before they take the instrument. So, for example, not taking the instrument when they're exhausted. And so they're just rushing through items and just selecting whatever. Obviously, you're not going to get a good reflection of your authentic top 5. Another piece is this, responding to items authentically. So some students respond to items based on who they want to be rather than the natural inclination. And some of you remember when you took the instrument for the first time, that timer that was in the right corner. And the reason why it's there is so you can go with your gut feeling. Right. So really being explicit about that with students and sharing with them, first of all, be conscious about your energy. and your level of concentration and attention that goes into this instrument, and then giving them direction on responding to items, authentically. Your gut feeling, your natural inclination as it relates to each of the instrument items. Yes.
Question to piggyback on that. I've also heard, and this wasn't in regards to strengths, it was other self-assessments, that you need to define a context. So like
Yeah.
that whole versus that word versus
Yeah.
friends versus,
Yeah.
the avoiding things.
Sure.
Would that be accurate for the strengths?
Yeah, so what I encourage students to do is not think about any of their roles, and I know that's difficult to do, but just go with your natural response. I've been doing this for quite some time. The first time I was introduced to strengths was at Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. And I had a gentleman who was in the military the first time that he took the instrument. And so when he responded to items, he was considering his role in the military as an officer. And so he had some of those stereotypical themes that surfaced. Which themes do you think? Command, strategic, starts with the D, discipline. Okay, and I can't remember the other two. Responsibility was definitely in his top 5. After he was discharged from the military, he's like, I don't know if these are a real reflection of who I am outside of that context. And so he said, hey, take it again. And he had a complete different top 5. And he felt like, hey, this reflects how I think, how I cultivate relationships. And so for some of our students, if that is the case, it may be prudent for them to take it again, even though we prefer for them to get it right the first time. So it is our preference for them not to consider, okay, I'm going to be a businessman, 5 years from now, so let me respond to items considering that role, or my role as a mother or a role as a father. Just going with your natural feeling.
So that the context could be, or is counterproductive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So since I was in grad school,
Yes.
I did that, it could be all along.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. The other thing too, like these themes also, they express implicit values, like what we deem as important. So I share with you my top 5. So achiever, I value productivity. With developer, I value progress. With includer, I value a context of acceptance. Okay? Values change based on life issues and milestones. So sometimes that will cause some variation in one's top 5. Now, we shouldn't see a complete overhaul of one's top 5, but sometimes that will cause some variation.
I'd say the most common mistake in taking the test that I've seen
Yes.
is viewing as a continuum, the answers as a continuum
Yeah.
from 1 to 5, rather than answering the question.
Yes.
So the question may be, I'm a good teacher, I'm a good counselor, and you say, oh, well, I'm kind of both, so I put it in the middle. Well,
Yeah.
The test just took you to say, I'm neither.
Right.
What you
Right.
need to say is, which one, and if I'm going to
Sure.
give you a second,
Sure.
I'm a great teacher, that's what I really am.
Yeah.
And that totally changes how the answers come out.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I
That's how I feel. the test.
Sure. And sometimes we have students that will select neutral so often that it really skews their results.
So the one question they answered in the extreme ends up skewing them.
Yeah. But I will share this with the group. Typically there are 5 to 6 items that are associated with each of the themes. So if you select neutral for one item that's related to achiever, but then you provide a more definite response for the other 5 items, things will balance itself out. But for some students who are somewhat indecisive through the entire instrument, and they're selecting neutral, more than yeah.
We've got context, futuristic, and adaptability.
Yeah.
A virtual impossibility. I mean, they had to have met neutral for almost everything in order to get that combination, just the way the math works. So, we'll take it again.
Sure.
I need the venue.
Yeah. All right. So this is what I would love for you to do. I know this is a bit unconventional, so kind of bear with me. And maybe this is an exercise that you can walk through with your first year students. So I'm going to give everybody a blue Post-it. And so you know your top 5. You read about them. You've read the comprehensive description for each. But I would love for you to develop a picture of your top 5. So an image,
Like a drawing?
a pictorial representation of your top 5. I'm giving you like 2 to 3 minutes to do that. Well, look, thanks for participating. And if we had time, we would go around the room and hear your interpretation of your pictorial representation of your top 5. I did this once before. Actually, this was back in like 2005 with a group of first-year students. And I still have students that send me messages through LinkedIn. They remember this exercise, and the way that they recall like their top 5 is based on the images that they drew. I think another contemporary exercise to do, all of our students, they have smartphones. And so they find scenes on campus that reflect their top 5. So students with intellection, they find that space where they go. Maybe one little space, a corner in the library where they can energize themselves. They feel like they're in their element, where they can ruminate on concepts and theory and practice, etc. Or a person who has achiever, they find a person who's working hard. Maybe a person with a hard hat on or a pair of boots, work boots, and they take those pictures and they send it via Instagram so all of their family members and friends can see it. So just some creative ideas to get students thinking about the way that they're wired. This is the piece. The bottom line is that we want first-year students to step beyond strengths awareness. Another way to class it in literature is talent identification. And what we've learned from some of the research is that talent identification by itself can sometimes lead to a fixed mindset, where students believe that they can only do certain things based on the constellation of strengths or talent themes that they have. And so there must be this emphasis on development. And you notice that in the title of this conversation that we're having, it's not strengths awareness that's identified as a pathway to thriving, but it's strengths development. So if we can create more touch points for students to think about ways that they can put these themes into action, we're actually doing a great job. And so I think that's an important piece, and we're going to revisit that in just a few moments. Okay. Here are some questions that may come up during week 4, week 5, and I thought it would be wise for us to cover them so that you can think about the responses that you share with students as it relates to strengths. So some students who may not intuitively get strengths, who may be fearful that this assessment is a way of kind of putting me in a box. So you see the first myth: strengths is about labeling people. What would your response to that notion be? Yes.
So if somebody told me their top strength was, I don't know, they're an organizer, I'm not sure, then I might be inclined, or the other students in the class might be inclined to put them in charge of something all the time.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's a great example. And so when Donald Clifton, when he designed the Clifton Strengthsfinder, his mindset was not that this instrument would label students or label people, but it would liberate people, that they could think of creative ways that they can employ the way that they're designed to be successful in whatever context they exist. And so I think that's important for us to share with students, that these themes are not intended to be labels, but they are pathways to success, and they can be applied in any context. Some people believe that the Strengthsfinder language is prescriptive. This is a question that I get from students a lot. Hey, I'm interested in being a nurse. Which theme should I have in my top 5? Or I'm interested in being a pediatrician. Which theme should I have in my top 5? And so something that we want to share with first-year students is that the language is not prescriptive, but it's descriptive. Okay? It describes the unique way that I'm wired. Yes.
And don't you think it's also, I mean, because I think often it's how the strengths get communicated
Yeah.
and how people internalize them. Because
Yes.
I have heard, I mean, especially students say, well, I'm an achiever or I'm deliberative. And it almost becomes so you need to accept me for who I am, but
Yes.
it's more labeling themselves, right? And sometimes
Yes.
helpful and sometimes not.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so helping them think beyond just this is a label. And I would even say helping students, yeah,
It's just more like, because I am this, then you can't have this expectation of me, or you can have even greater
Yeah.
expectations of me.
Yeah.
Wendy, I'm
Can I
sorry.
give an example?
Yeah.
So I teach organizational psychology.
Yes.
And prior to switching over to the faculty side, I worked in human resources
Sure.
for 17 years. So just to give you some context, one of the things that would happen in our practitioner setting is we would get individuals coming in for employee relations type work because they were not doing their job, and they would say, well, I can't do that task because it's
Yeah.
not strength. So the mindset, though, is to help students understand that just because that's not your strength, you take, and this is where positive psychology comes in.
Yes.
You take your strength and you say, okay, so you can't file because deliberative, or I don't know what strength would be. But you have achiever. So
Yeah.
how do you use achiever
Yeah.
to make that a
Yeah.
task to get
Sure.
that done? And so
Sure.
it's helping them to see
Absolutely.
how to turn that around, because I thought so tired of people
Yeah.
saying, oh, that's not my job description because
Yeah.
I don't.
Or somebody else might be better at that who has
Correct.
this strength.
yeah. We've got,
I'm so sorry.
please,
I was
please.
just thinking, it seems like you could sort of connect that to when you were talking about some people want to have relatable strengths or smart strengths
Sure.
or whatever, an intelligence strength. That you could say, well, no, it doesn't mean that you can't study because you don't have an intelligence strength. It
Yeah.
means that you study maybe in a study group because you're
Sure.
you're an exact person.
Sure.
Or it doesn't mean that you're a cold person. It means that you are really thoughtful about the relationships that you create with people. And
Yeah.
that you really choose your friends carefully and just sort of reason.
Absolutely.
How do you approach those things?
I think sometimes what we see too with first year students, they really relate to one or two themes. And those are the themes that they use to kind of define themselves, rather than exploring the capability that's tied to other themes as well. And so you raise a very good point. Sometimes it's helping students think about, well, how do I couple my achiever maybe with adaptability to tackle this task? Or so thinking about the dynamics that exist between strengths that kind of operate in concert. Very good comments. Very good. I saw one more hand. Yes.
What was the name?
Oh, okay, Tracy, please. And then we'll come to you, Gary.
Okay, so on the labeling thing, I don't want to go too deep here, but there was something that was shared with me at one point that still, it continues to have an impact, and that is that, first of all, we're all created in the image of God. And if you imagine God looking at his reflection in a mirror, and accidentally that mirror got broken, all of us are a piece of that mirror, that broken mirror, and we each reflect some beautiful part of God's perfection because we were created in his image. And if that's something that we can communicate to students about strengths, that each of these, because a strength is a positive thing, it reflects part of God's glory that
Yeah.
he innately created in each one of
Yeah.
us. Then we could say, it's not about labeling, it's
Yeah.
about you as a piece of God's work
Yeah.
that he has gifted in a unique way to pursue a unique calling.
Yeah. Chip was very intentional before he passed away about using language such as God-given talent and communicating to students that these resources that you have within you, that they are gifts. And he even developed this theology of strength surrounding what we're discussing now, the importance of being good stewards of what is given, and seeing the value that's tied to those gifts. So I love what you're sharing. I've been reading this book. Some of you may have heard of it. The title of it is Shape, and it's written by Eric Ries. It came out quite some time ago. And he uses SHAPE as an acronym. S is for spiritual gifts, H is for heart, A is for abilities, P is for personality, E is for experience. And he says that God uses all those elements that are kind of tied to who we are to carry out his work, to carry out his purpose. And one thought that he shares in the book is that the ultimate goal is not to discover our gifts, but to use our gifts to be a blessing to others. And so it's that idea of stewardship, is using the gifts to serve others. I think in the context of FYS, we're thinking, how do we help students, first of all, discover the full capability that's tied to these themes, and understand, first of all, how to apply them academically, how to apply them relationally, and then how they're also linked to the thriving outcomes that were referenced on yesterday. Yes. Well, let me get Gary first, and then coming to you, Starla.
So I haven't had this experience specifically with strengths, but with Strengthsfinder, but I have had it with the Myers-Briggs.
Yes.
Where I've heard, and I've been in conversations, and maybe I've even done it myself,
Yes.
where they say, "Oh, you're a
Yeah. Yeah.
ILMO, whatever P."
You've just created a new personality preference, Sal, and it suits you.
And like you said, they've just categorized.
Yeah.
They've just said, "Oh, well, that
Yeah.
makes sense about you, and so therefore I expect you to be, your behavior is coming from this motive,
Yeah.
and this is the way you are." And so and then even maybe we've only got a few places where you can be utilized on our team, in our department.
Yeah.
It becomes
Yeah.
this, or we need that kind of person to do this kind of job.
Yeah.
You said that already.
And yeah.
So how do we allow the Strengthsfinder to have validity? Because if it doesn't actually, we can't see that these descriptors of us are true about part of our personality,
Yeah.
and our makeup, but yet not become biased or prejudicial
Yeah.
when applying them to either ourselves or others. How do you live in that balance between it having value and not being injurious?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think that's a difficult conversation initially for first-year students. I mean, even if you take a look at the strengths development cycle, and if you think about the developmental stage of most of our first-year students, the focus is always on me and how I'm wired, and everybody else should be wired the way I am. And so I do believe as the term persists, we can start helping students develop what we call others awareness. So seeing the value in differing strengths. Actually, Rath and Conchi, some of you have read their book, Strengths-Based Leadership. They've done a lot of research surrounding this, that all of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, we tend to be attracted to people who are wired like ourselves. And even when we recruit people to our teams, we tend to choose people who have similar strengths. And sometimes it's not even a conscious decision we're making. It's just like there's appeal because you're like me. And what they suggest is that it really takes intentionality to say, I need to partner with someone who's unlike me, because that's where the greatest partnership can come. And so if there's a way for us to create moments in our courses where students are getting to know other students who are wired unlike them, I think it becomes an incredible learning opportunity for them. And I think it even leads to that outcome of thriving and diverse citizenship. Like one thing that I like to do with students, I'll have them do some random exercise. It doesn't matter. I mean, you build a tower with straws and tape or whatever. And students get into what? The product. I want my tower to be especially if you have a lot of competition and achiever in the room. I mean, they really get into it. But then I always share with them, it's not really about the product, it's about the process. So what did you learn in terms of how these different strengths interacted? What value did Eric bring to the process, considering the strengths that he... And a lot of times students have to pause and say, oh, I was just thinking about my contribution. And so creating those moments where students can value those differing perspectives, I think is very, very helpful. And I think that expands their empathic capacity, to be honest with you. Yeah. Yes.
I've done this a lot with students, and the little activities, like that's the hardest thing, is how do you actually create activities
Yeah.
that you can do, what you just said.
Sure.
You know, one of the things that, because so many of them label right off the bat, when
Yeah.
they think, you know, they all have a connotation with every
Sure.
word that you're gonna pick, is before I even introduce it, I will have them go through and describe it to the class, their strengths to the class in their own words. Let them throw out the first time, then I
Yeah.
can go in after the fact. You know, another one is have them go through their preferred, you know, just one example done, their preferred style of communication. How do you like to
Yeah.
be spoken to?
Yeah.
And as they start describing how they like to be spoken to,
Yeah.
you can pick out
Sure.
exactly where their strengths are.
Yeah.
And, you know, but you have to get, like I say, them thinking outside
Sure.
themselves, but when they'll do that through talking,
Yeah.
like I say, in their own terms, but then when they hear that from their peers, it changes their interactions
Sure.
so much.
Sure.
When you then put them in groups or activities, but those are the hardest things, finding those little
Yeah,
exercises
yeah.
if you've never done it before,
Yeah.
and you're comfortable teaching from.
Yeah. One other exercise I like to do, thank you for sharing that, Justin. It's really good. Lee's like if you get some just standard index cards, and everybody in the room, they've taken the Strengthsfinder, you know, so they're familiar with the language, and turn them backwards and hand them out almost like cards. And have students turn them over and say, okay, for a day, these are your top 5. How would you approach your life differently? And that challenges students to step outside of themselves and think about approaching life from someone else's vantage point. And so students, they share with me, man, I've never thought about that. And I think that pushes students to think beyond what? The self. And it's that others awareness piece. And I think it helps them too when they're trying to foster this process of collaborative engagement. So how do I intersect or interface my strengths with the strengths of others who have strengths that are different than my own? Okay? I saw, yes, your hand, and Margie will get you. Yes.
I wanted to quickly say
Yeah.
that often a lot of students are really quick to label their weaknesses.
Yes.
Things that they're not good at.
Yes.
And actually identifying their strengths and
Yeah.
building on strengths instead of raising their weaker areas is really empowering.
Yes, indeed. And that's really the premise of the strengths philosophy. It's not making an effort to weakness fix. So it's being aware of areas of weakness, and it's managing that area of weakness and making sure it doesn't inhibit me from performing at a high level. But it's really identifying these areas of talent, this place of strength, and building in that area. For those of us who are leaders in this room, if you walk into a new organization, before you change anything, before you implement an intervention, you start with typically a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis. There's a reason why it's called a SWOT and not a WASAT, right? All right, some of you laughed, others of you did not. I may recant that one from the joke list, okay? But you start with strengths. And so, and that goes back to the perspective. I think we want students, when they walk into a space and when they interact with a new student, that they're looking for what? The strengths of that student. What are their strengths? How can they offer value? How can they offer contribution? We want them to do that too with faculty. So just because a faculty is wired differently than they are, they have adaptability, but maybe the faculty member has discipline. But they can see the value in that faculty member's strengths. So what you just shared with us, Jonathan, that is the premise of the strengths philosophy. It is. Thank you. Thank you.
Week 6 before they actually take the next one.
It is week 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and you want to tell them why, since that has been a question?
Yeah, yes, indeed. I guess we've got a little sidetrack, haven't we? A little bit, or I have. So forgive me.
That's a great question, though. Why is it week 5? Great.
So October the 5th through the 9th is designated as Strengths Week. And Strengths Week is going to be a campus-wide campaign. Traditionally in the past, it's been applicable just to first-year students. This year, we're going to be intentional to make this campaign applicable for everybody that's tied to the learning community. So we want everybody reflecting on their God-given capacity. But for our first-year students, we will organize and coordinate a week long campaign of sessions that address every signature theme that is assessed by the Clifton Strengthsfinder. And we'll have these sessions. They'll be facilitated by faculty and staff and some of our administrative leadership. Some of you have conducted these sessions in the past. Some of you have been very gracious. Justin's done it, and Brian's done it, and others in the room. Forgive me if Wendy has done it, Sarah's done it many times, and Shara. Okay, so many of you have been a part of the experience. And so students, what we instruct them to do is to attend sessions that speak to themes that are reflected in their top 5. And basically during those sessions, they are exposed to the strengths philosophy. They learn about the premier characteristics that are linked to the theme. They also have conversation about the shadow sides of the theme. And some of you have heard of the shadow sides. On some campuses, they use the language of the balcony and the basement. So many students, sometimes they will overuse or abuse these themes, and it creates tension or problems in relationships. And so we want to share what those shadow sides are with students. And then we also have like reflective prompts for them to think about academic goals that they would like to achieve through select themes, ways that they can cultivate healthy relationships with the themes that they have. And typically the facilitator for the session, they have that signature theme reflected in their top 5. So it becomes a real nice learning opportunity for students, but then it's also a great opportunity to kind of build community for students to kind of interact with people who are wired like them. Another formalized process that we've added to the process of is strengths coaching. So some of you are familiar with the CCSD program here at APU, the Community College and Student Development Program. It's a master's level program, and we've partnered with their leadership, and I would say about 60% of their students have gone through strength certification training. So it's basically a 2-day training. They're very aware of the strengths language. And so a lot of students, they want to know, how do my constellation of strengths, how do they intersect with each other? And so they'll have an opportunity to sit down with one of our master's level students to have those meaningful conversations. And Strengths Week is actually pretty big. Apex is going to play a role in facilitating meaningful conversations with students about how they can employ their strengths academically. Alpha leaders will have discussions about ways that these themes can be applied socially across campus. So that will be October the 5th through the 9th. And there's a lot of things in the works to make sure that this is going to be huge. So it's pretty exciting.
It's really exciting. It's very visionary.
It is. So you'll hear more. You'll hear more about it. Some content areas that you may want to consider if you want to link strengths to. I think in week 4 there's an emphasis on growth mindset. So I think that's a great opportunity if you plan to reference some of the content from the momentum text in your class. I think it's real nice to couple strengths development with growth mindset. There's a chapter, please,
You can look at them.
if you don't mind.
Of course.
I had this on my last slide, but also I believe week 6. There's a chapter 2 on goal setting. Yeah, so chapter 5, chapter 6, that's a perfect place to interject strengths as well. And remember, the emphasis is on how these signature themes serve as pathways to the thriving outcomes that were referenced on tomorrow. And so that's a perfect place to interject strengths. One thought, and then we need to
Do we have
close.
to wait until week 5 to have them take the test?
Right now, that is the plan. That is the plan.
Okay,
I-
so here's my problem. I've been doing this session with
Sure.
you guys forever.
Sure.
And in the old system anyway, I would get to my session on a Monday, and the students have all taken the thing, but they don't know anything
Yeah.
except their 5 things, they don't know what they mean, they may have
Sure.
read, they may not.
That's
They don't
Sure.
understand strengths at all, so I
Yeah.
spend the entire time just getting the entire strength idea across.
Yeah.
And then we never get to the strength I'm supposed to be teaching them.
Yeah.
So, and in this case, they may go to a Monday session, my classes are meet till Wednesday.
Sure.
So if I could take the test a week ahead, or 2 weeks ahead, or we get my
Yeah.
conversation earlier, then they'd be prepared.
Well,
I just want to say that when we went, and Keith can speak to this so
Sure.
much better than me, but I mean, the issue was if they did it too soon, where they're gonna be so in transition mode that
Yes.
they weren't really settled enough to really, you know, approach it meaningfully. It will just be like a checkoff, so that was the idea, but I think that is, and that was really what created, I would say this year, this real motivation to do something different is exactly
Yeah.
what you said, that people walk away with their top 5 and then they don't even remember them
Yeah.
at all. So they haven't really done that more developmental piece.
Well, maybe
so.
we talked about it and explained it week 3 or 4, but they didn't take the test week 5.
Right.
Great.
But somehow they have to have some context.
One,
Context.
well, let me share this. For the past 2 years, if I could just have 2 minutes, Stephanie. The past 2 years, what we've done with beginnings, the week before Strengths Week, we met with students and gave them context on what would happen the next week. Even giving them instruction on which sessions to attend, because sometimes, you know, prior to setting that up, students would just randomly go to sessions, and a lot of the you know, there were sessions that were not reflected in their top 5. This year, we're going to do something a little bit differently. We're working with media services, and we're going to create a video that students can watch a week before Strengths Week, just to get some level of orientation as it relates to the Strengths philosophy, and even what Strengths Week will entail. In addition to that, we're going to work with some of our volunteers from the CCSD students to create videos for all 34 signature themes that students can access. So if they're only able to attend one session, you know, one Strengths Week session, they can go to our website and they can look at a 60-second video that premieres the characteristics, the shadow size ways that these themes can be applied academically. So there will be videos for students, but then there will also be videos for faculty. And so that is actually a major project that we're going to undertake this summer with media services. So we're really excited about that. Yeah.